Hi everyone, comic book reviewer here. This time doing another Pixar film review, and this one is on Elio. Now, as you know, Elio is a 2025 science fiction adventure film, and after seeing the original trailer, after kind of seeing how it underperformed at the box office, the best way I would describe Elio is saying, what if we took the Owl House, put a sci-fi twist onto it, and went with a completely similar premise, just kind of making it with aliens. So the premise of the film is meant to follow Elio, who, after the death of his parents, we see how he's pretty much being taken care of by his Aunt Olga, who is meant to be an Air Force major, and we see how after getting amazed and even using space and sci-fi stuff as a coping mechanism after his parents' death, we see how he wishes to be abducted by aliens, but we see how because of Elio's newfound interest, not only does it get him into further trouble, but it also makes Aunt Olga having to rely on other options to try and get Elio to kind of get his act together, until he eventually does get abducted by aliens, and where he has to kind of make the aliens believe that he's the ambassador of Earth. And you can tell they're kind of going with the whole Owl House route, where the main character has a interest or an obsession for something, it goes way too far, the characters around them have to resort to drastic measures to get their act together, only for the characters to kind of learn the consequences of what they did, of their actions the hard way. I think the problem with Elio, it's like looking at Luce from the Owl House. I know we're supposed to see, obviously, them as sympathetic characters, but because of them taking their love, their interests, as well as their passion for things way too far, obviously their sort of family members, as well as their sort of peers, had to resort to drastic measures to try and get them to kind of get their act together. The problem is, it's alright to have an interest, and it's alright to like something, or have something as a way to kind of cope after something that happened to you. It's just important to dial it back and understand what people are trying to say to you. And if you understand that, then you understand that you know to dial it back. I can kind of also see where they're trying to build up the film's main villain. Obviously, Lord Grygon is to be this sort of dark side-like villain, this sort of guy who's meant to sound more like this menacing threat. And I can see what they were trying to do with obviously having it with his son to be sort of like a foil to Elio, kind of having them both in situations that they just don't want to be a part of. But the problem is, I think, is that it's clear the film is trying to be similar to the Owl House. It's clear that the film is trying to be good and interesting, but what it's relying on is a abysmal script, and it's aware of that. The problem is, Elio doesn't come off as interesting, he doesn't come off as sympathetic, he just comes off as a kid who obviously needed to understand that his creativity, his interests, as well as his love for things, end up kind of not only affecting him, but other people around him. And there are moments where his actions do hit you over the head, that he obviously made the wrong decision. But I also give the film credit, is obviously showing this kind of community of other worlds, other planets. You can tell they were trying to pay a bit more attention to what this kind of space community would be. These other aliens, other technologies, other cultures. That's interesting. It kind of reminds you a bit of, say, New Genesis from DC Comics, like having this kind of big utopia, this kind of amazing world. But the problem is, We hardly get to see this. It's just mostly Elio trying to build up this lie that he himself got himself into. It's a bit hard to sympathize with the character, and the problem is, I think the film is trying to work with what was given, but knowing what the final version was going to be before the changes really makes you think what we could have gotten instead of just a film trying to be something like The Owl House. And it's aware of that. It's clear Disney just told Pixar to copy this concept, do your own take on it, and give us what we can. So is Elio a good movie? No, but it's got moments where you can tell they just kind of throw in a protagonist much like Luz, who constantly gets themselves in trouble, have to learn things the hard way, and obviously painting the idea that strange and unusual is basically awesome, even though by the end of the day, people just expect you to dial it back on your interests, your love for things, and not go overboard. So I think Elio is not the greatest film. It feels like it's trying to wear the skin of another property, and it definitely deserves a thumbs down. Not interesting, not great, just a film that's going to give obviously kids and people the wrong idea about kind of the that it's alright to take your love and interest for things without really thinking of the full consequences, and how sometimes parents, teachers, and authority figures will have to get you prepared for the outside world and have to understand that the world isn't exactly like you. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.